Hi, my name is Rachel, and I'm just going to be talking about how I utilize the Vocabulary Square in my mini unit lesson plan and how this would transfer to a classroom setting. So the topic that I chose to do was rock types within the rock cycle, and I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, remember what the rock cycle is. You had to have learned it in earth science, and everyone's kind of shown the same diagram when they teach it. It's like they have three boxes, and it has igneous, sedimentary, metamorphic, which are the three rock types, and then they have a bunch of arrows showing how they all interlocked and how they can all become one another just by changing the formation and the processes. So the key aspect of the three rock types is that they are the fundamentals of the rock cycle, and the objectives of this lesson would be that students would be able to familiarize themselves with the properties of the three rock types with the intent of being able to comprehend their individual formation processes, and students will be able to recognize the properties of the three rock types and comprehensively differentiate between the three. So how does the vocabulary square apply and why am I kind of choosing this? Well, at this point they would have been on day 2. They would have already learned about igneous rocks, which have its own terminology and its own processes. So using the vocabulary square will help focus and centralize on the processes that go with sedimentary rocks that they're focusing on in today's lesson. So at this point, the kids have come into the classroom, they're starting their do now, and at the end of their do now, they're given a list of 4 words: erosion, lithification, detritus, and dissolution. And these are words that are specifically correlated to sedimentary rocks, and the students are instructed to choose one so that they can begin their vocabulary square. The vocabulary square has 4 components: the word, the definition, examples or details, and an illustration to help remember the term. So the goal would be that students are going to start to fill out all 4 of these boxes. However, before they start doing that, I'm going to model my own vocabulary square so they can kind of get the gist of what I'm talking about. I always find that when you model something, you can understand it better. So even though this seems very easy, just to make sure that they get the assignment correctly, I'm just going to show them how I would do it. So basically, as I just said, I would model for the students my own vocabulary square so that they can see what it's supposed to look like and get the gist, just to make it a little easier and so that nobody can come and say, oh, I don't understand it. This kind of eliminates that. So what I would do with what I have here is I would draw out a box. Hopefully you could see this. And then break it into 4. It's a little uneven, but it's okay. And then I would write the word here. I'd write the definition here. I'd write like examples or details depending on whatever they want to put there here. And then I would draw the diagram here. So in the next slide, you're going to see what word I chose and kind of just get a more prettier example of what I just tried to show. But again, by modeling this for the students, I feel like it's just easier for them to understand. It's one thing to explain it, but it's one thing to see it, and this can help visual learners also. Right, so what you're seeing here is the vocabulary square itself. So you can see that there's a component over here that talks about the word, the definition, examples or details, and then here's the illustration to help remember the term. Right, so what you're seeing here is a better version of what I just tried to draw. So in this case, I chose the word precipitation. So I'd write it on the board for them and say, okay, well, this is the word that I chose. Now remember, they have 4 words that they could choose from, but I'm obviously choosing a different one so that they can't just take my example and do it and then the assignment's meaningless. So I chose precipitation, and then I would show them this article, which I screenshotted and put on the right. And I put these little arrows because basically what I would do is I would point to them and I'd be like, okay, well, while I was reading it, I saw the word precipitation here, and this is what I found out about it. And then I would write my own definition on the board for them of what I think based off this article, and then my own details that I found based off this article, and then draw a little illustration for them. And then hopefully that by me modeling, they can get the gist of what they need to do because they're ultimately going to start this assignment but need to finish it at home. And I wanted them to finish it at home so that they can do it by themselves and not have to ask each other or rely on me. I kind of wanted them to be able to read this article and kind of do this assignment on their own. It's for their own benefit so that they can learn the terms. Okay, so what you're seeing on this slide is the rubric for this assignment, and ultimately I'm not out there to give them like a letter grade or a number grade and like tell them that they did it completely wrong. This rubric is basically to just see where they stand. So that's why I have connection. Like I want to see how did they interpret this word that they chose in the article, and where did they make these context clues, or where did they get their inferences from. I'm just curious to see where they stand. Completeness obviously is a different story, because if a student didn't complete the assignment, they're obviously not going to get the same grade as somebody who did complete the assignment, because that's just unfair. And the participation aspect comes in the next day, because what they're ultimately going to be doing is finishing this for homework, and then the following morning, as they're due now, they're going to be like parent sharing, like what their word was, or if somebody has the same word as them, like what did they put as a definition, what did they put as an example, or if they have a partner that has a different word than them, they're going to be learning about that other word and what does that mean. And so that's where the participation aspect comes in for this part of the rubric. Okay, so what do students learn from this activity? Well, for starters, they're going to learn a new vocab term, which is very important because these terms are going to show up in the next activity. They're also going to have learned how the vocab connects to processes related to sedimentary rocks, which is also important for the next activity, but also if you think about it, like I mentioned earlier, the day before they're learning about igneous rocks, and the day after this, they're learning about metamorphic rocks. And between those three, it can become really confusing to try to remember all the terms and the processes and differentiate between them. So hopefully, this activity kind of just like sets in that these are just for sedimentary and helps them remember that these only apply to this rock type. This literacy activity will have helped break down the components of the vocab words so that it's easier for them to comprehend and retain. And that's just basically saying that the Vocab Square offers different ways of like analyzing the word. So if you're a visual learner, there's a picture and that may help you remember it. Or if you're one of those people that learns from definitions, there's also the definition listed. And then if you're one of those people like me, I learn from like examples or like little details, and that helps like be like, oh, okay, that's for that word. So hopefully the vocab square is like really purposeful and just accommodating a few different aspects of how you may learn. And lastly, students will also practice these literacy skills like inferencing, analyzing, and the use of context clues. And those are really important because those transform to any subject in any class. And I think it's really helpful that they're seeing it in a science classroom and not just in an English or a history classroom. So that's hopefully something that they learn from this activity, just so that, for future science lessons other than this one in our classroom, they're going to have they're going to have already worked with these skills. And lastly, these are some of the accommodations slash modifications for this assignment. You could read through them because there's a bunch, but some of the main ones that I wanted to focus on are I made this assignment started in class and then finished as homework so that students don't feel pressed for time, because not everyone works at the same pace. They also fully could have chose whatever word they wanted from the list rather than be assigned the word. So in the case that maybe they go home and they're reading the article and they're like, I really can't find any information on this word, they can always just switch the word and then let me know the next day. Very flexible. They're also going to be learning the word from other students, learning the other words from the other students the following day. And again, I wasn't really like grading this assignment. I'm kind of just checking for understanding, checking for completeness, seeing how they use their literacy skills and apply it to create this vocabulary square. And yeah, that's it.